Chapter 2. Part 3. How's your friend now? Did you look him up? And Mama was out with Wasim when she was suddenly reminded of Salah. Better. He may be discharged in a couple of days, replied Wasim. Shall we check on him on our way back? And Mama was a little hesitant, but Wasim reassured her and she agreed, although she thought it was pointless to inquire about the welfare of such a patient. One would have thought his parents would have had the courtesy to visit us or thank us for helping him, she said. You have no idea of their condition, objected Wasim. What do you expect them to say if they are asked, when they come here, why their son does such things? For fun, he felt sorry for them and said, his parents did thank me profusely and also thanked Ami and Baba when they had gone to the hospital to see Salah. I'm glad they did not mention the incident to his parents, it would have been awful. But why does your friend act this way? And Mama persisted. You re asking me as though he informs me before he decides to take his life. Wasim was quite annoyed. He's a close friend of yours. Not all that close either. Besides, what he does is his business. Maybe there's a problem. Then you should keep a distance from such people. What if you should start behaving in the same way tomorrow? If you remember the way you behaved that day, that incident will certainly create a difference in this friendship, Wasim said smugly. It was not quite the right reaction on your part. I don't think he'll remember that slap, he was hardly conscious. Why? Did he say something? And Mama asked. Besides, he was trying to pull his arm away, and he was abusing, and then he pulled off my dupatta, she added. Wasim tried to defend Salah. Whatever it was, I was very angry then, but I regretted it and was grateful to Allah that his life was saved, or else I'd feel terrible about slapping him. And Mama was really remorseful, but when Wasim suggested she apologize to Salah, and Mama refused. Why should I rake up what's past? Besides, he's not so close that this should affect our relationship. When they were through with their shopping, Wasim drove to the clinic to see Salah. He was having soup when they walked in and he immediately recognized the girl with Wasim. Salah's mother had told him that it was Wasim's sister who gave him first aid. He remembered nothing of that, but he did remember the tight slap across his face. He stopped as he saw Mama. His piercing look convinced her that he had not forgotten the events of that night. After exchanging greetings, Tayyaba and Sikandar Usman thanked Mama. Salah had known Wasim for some years now, and had seen Mama at their house, but had never really paid attention to her. However, he stared at her rather critically. He was not grateful or indebted to her, she had ruined his plans by saving his life. Mama continued to talk to his mother, but was also acutely aware of his eyes on her. Never before had anyone looked at her so distastefully, she felt like walking out. Salah sank further in her opinion, she had meant to apologize, but now she felt like landing him with a few more hard slaps. A while later, they said their goodbyes, but Mama did not bother to address Salah and left without even looking at him. She was relieved to be out. She criticized Wasim on his choice of friends. He was taken aback and asked her why. He does not even have the courtesy, after all he knows I'm your sister and that I was in the room with you. He's not worth wasting one's time on, and it is better that you have little to do with him. I'll be careful, Wasim assured her. You need not repeat this episode. He tried to change the subject and Mama kept a studied silence. But Salah was now on her list of objectionable persons. It was a coincidence that she was in Islamabad when this incident took place, otherwise she would not have had this unpleasant introduction and close encounter with Salah. After her conversion to Islam, Mama saw Jalal Ansar closely when he came to their college. She was sitting with her friends on the lawn and he came to have a word with Zainab. They moved to a side, but Mama could not take her eyes off him. A strange sensation of happiness surrounded her. He left, but her gaze followed him till he was out of sight. Her friends were busy in conversation, but she was oblivious to her surroundings. It was when she could see him no more that she was jolted back to reality. Her second encounter with him was at Zainab's house when she accompanied her home from college. Zainab had been asking her friends over, but everyone else declined with one pretext or another, so Mama went along. She used to feel an inexplicable sense of peace in Zainab's house. Perhaps it was the association with Jalal. Mama was waiting in the drawing room while Zainab went to get the tea. Jalal walked in and was surprised to see Mama. He did not expect to find her there. He greeted her in his usual manner and Mama responded, shyly. "Did you come with Zainab?" he asked. "Where is she?" "I needed to talk to her." "I didn't know she had company." He excused himself and turned around. "You recite knots very well," said Mama spontaneously. He stopped in his tracks. "Thank you. Where did you hear me?" "When I had called Zainab one day and was waiting for her, and then Zainab told me about the competition." "You had recited that knot," she went on, and Jalal was at a loss. Should he feel happy or surprised? He thanked her for the compliment, this tall, slim, chatter-clad young woman whose dark eyes had a strange impact on him. Many people had praised his skill, but this girl's praise was remarkable, and more so was her expression of it. He walked away from the drawing room. Speaking to girls was not his forte, much less to one whom he barely knew. And Mama sat there in a state of ecstasy. She could not believe that she had spoken to Jalal Ansar. So close, facing her. She stared at the spot where he had been standing a while ago, and in her mind's eye she could still see him there. Their next meeting was at the hospital. If Mama had been to Zainab's house by choice, then this meeting was by chance. She had accompanied Rabia, who wanted to meet a friend there. She missed a heartbeat when saw Jalal in the corridor with a group of final year students. The corridor was too crowded for Mama to move towards him, and she realized then how hard it was for her to stop herself. Even as she sat in the room, her thoughts were out there with him. When Rabia and Mama came out after more than an hour, the students had dispersed from the corridor. She felt a pang of disappointment. Rabia was busy chatting when going down the stairs, and they came face to face with Jalal. Mama felt an electric wave run through her. "Assalamu alaikum, Jalal bye." "How are you?" Rabia greeted him. Jalal replied politely, then asked what brought them to the hospital. Rabia explained the reason while Mama stood looking at him quietly. "Das jiri Mary tan hai ki tu any hai to ki. You have been my savior in my loneliness. Mita mar jada agar sath na hoda terra. Were it not for you, I would have been dead." His voice seemed to send her into a trance. Seldom had she heard anyone speak such chaste Urdu, and every time he spoke, his voice reminded her of the same beautiful knot she had first listened to. She felt curiously proud and envious looking at him. Speaking to Rabia, Jalal had perhaps realized Mama's concentration and turned to her with a smile. Mama looked away. For a moment, she had an irrepressible desire to get closer to him. She looked away from him and, glancing about her, recited La Hal under her breath. "Maybe Satan wants to lead me astray," she thought to herself, but despite her supplications to ward off evil, there was no difference in her feelings. She still felt the same attraction. Despite the years-long engagement to Ashad, she had never felt drawn to him this way. Standing there that day, she feared Jalal for the first time. What will I do if I lose control of myself every time I set eyes on him? I was never so weak. What is it about him that melts my will? Zainab knocked on Jalal's door and entered. "Are you free?" she asked, then continued. "I have a request from a friend. Can you record some knots in your voice on a cassette?" Jalal was surprised and looked inquiringly at her. "It's for my friend Mama. She requested me and I agreed." Jalal smiled. He was reminded of his meeting with her. "Isn't she the same girl who was here?" he asked. "Yes. She's from Islamabad but studies here. She lives in the hostel. Her father's a big industrialist, but she's very modest," Zainab divulged. "Seems to be very religious, from what I saw of her with you," observed Jalal. "The college environment has not affected her." "Yes. She's always been wearing a chadar since she came, and I think her family's very conservative. But they're all very well educated, her brothers and sisters too. She's the youngest among them," Zainab went on. "So you'll record the cassette for me, won't you?" You can have it tomorrow, he replied. Zainab left the room and he returned to his reading. Their next encounter was in the library. Imama's reaction was spontaneous when she saw him there. She went up and greeted him. I wanted to thank you. Jalal looked at her, confused. For the cassette. He smiled at her. I had no idea that such a request would be made of me. You are very fortunate, she said softly. In what way? In every way, you've been blessed with so much. So are you blessed, he replied. She looked at him with a wistful smile and he suspected her eyes were moist. She lowered her gaze. To begin with, I had nothing, but now I do, she intoned with the same softness. Jalal was trying to give meaning to her words. You have such veneration, such love for the Prophet, Pbuh, when you say his name. She stopped midway, but Jalal waited for her to complete her words. I envy you, she said. Not all people feel the same way as you do. Nor can they express their adoration for him like you, in a way that leads the listener to fall at the Prophet's, Pbuh, feet. Hazrat Muhammad, Pbuh, must love. You too, she looked up at him, clear-eyed. Perhaps, it was a misconception on my part, he thought, then spoke up. If it is so, then indeed, I am very fortunate. All I know is that I do feel a deep love and respect for our Prophet, Pbuh, and that is a blessing indeed for me. Allah blesses few with this feeling. Jalal spoke with sentiment and Imama could not take her eyes off him. She had never felt as insignificant before as she did now. Perhaps, I may recite knots someday, but never with the passion of Jalal Ansar. My voice will never move people the way his rectal does, she thought despairingly as she walked away from the library. After those meetings with Jalal, Imama tried her best to avoid him, even avoid thinking about him. She tried to distance herself from Zainab too, but it was all to no avail. Her helplessness increased with each passing day, and she was brought to her knees. There's something about him that breaks all my defenses, she conceded. Perhaps it was this admission that turned her attention towards him again. This may have been an unconscious act earlier on, but now she consciously put Jalal in Ashad's place in her life. What is wrong with my seeking the company of someone whose voice compels me to return to the presence of my Prophet, Pbuh? Why should I not desire a man whose love for the Prophet, Pbuh, is more than mine? Why should I not pray that our faiths should be intertwined, that his name should be my identity? He is someone I know, someone I envy for all that he's been blessed with. Imama had all the justifications, all the answers to validate her emotions. She began to find ways of being where Jalal would be. She'd call up Zainab when she knew he would be home too, as he often received the phone. The random conversations between them became longer and purposeful, and finally they began to meet. Javeria, Rabia and Zainab were unaware of the growing friendship between Imama and Jalal. He was doing a house job and Imama often went to his hospital. They had not declared their love, but were fully conscious of their sentiments for each other. He knew that her feelings for him were stronger than just attraction, just as she too was aware of his feelings for her. Jalal was so religious that he never expected to find himself thus involved with a girl or that he would be meeting her this way, but it all happened involuntarily and gradually. He did not mention his feelings for Imama too. Zainab, had he done so, she would have told him about the engagement to Ashad. Had he known, he would have been very careful and would not have allowed the relationship to grow to this degree. During one of their meetings, Imama came up with a proposal, much to Jalal's amazement. What do you plan to do when your house job's finished? I'll go abroad for specialization. And then? Then I'll return and set up my own hospital. Have you thought about marriage? Her question caught him off guard. Everyone thinks about marriage, he smiled. Who do you plan to marry? That remains to be seen. After a pause, Imama asked, will you marry me? Jalal was too stunned to reply. Did I offend you? She asked as he sat in shocked silence. She repeated her question, shaking him out of his stupor. It is a question I should have asked you. Will you marry me? Yes, she was composed, collected. And you? Yes, of course. Who else would I marry? He saw a glow on her face as he completed his words. When my house job's done, I'll send my parents to your family formally. She was quiet for a while, then said, Jalal, how could I marry you without my parents' approval? He was surprised. What do you mean? It could be that they may object to our marriage. Haven't you told them about us? How would you know their reaction? No, she said. But I know them. Jalal was perplexed. He had not expected any resistance on the part of her parents, but she knew otherwise. Will you still marry me, despite their opposition? He pondered the situation, and his silence pushed her into turmoil. At last, he spoke. Yes. Even then, you'd be my only choice. I cannot think of marrying anyone else. I'll try to convince your parents to agree, but if they refuse, then we will go ahead all the same. Will your parents agree? She asked. Yes, and I will persuade them if they don't. They never refuse me, he said with a hint of pride. Hello, Imama turned round at the call. It was Salah, standing a few feet away, as casual as ever with his shirt unbuttoned and hands thrust into his jeans pockets. Timur was with him too. For a moment, Imama did not know how to react. Come, let me introduce you to the young lady, said Salah when he saw Imama at the bookshop. This chatter-clad person? Timur was taken aback when he saw her. Who's this? She's Wasim's sister. What do you have to do with them? Wasim and his family are very conservative, so why do you want to meet her? I'm not meeting her for the first time, I've met her before, and anyway, what's the harm in talking to her? Salah ignored Timur's objections. Imama's eyes moved from the magazine to Salah and to his friend. How are you? He asked, seeing her look towards them. Fine, she replied. Salah introduced Timur, saying he was also Wasim's friend. Wasim's out there, she gestured towards the shopping center. But we're not here to meet him, said Salah. She looked at him seriously. We're here to talk to you. I hardly know you, so what's there to talk about? She replied coldly. She did not like the look in Salah's eyes. He never spoke to people with his eyes lowered, she thought, especially not to girls. She began to flip through the magazine. You don't know me? He sneered. I live right next to your house. You certainly do, but I don't know you personally, she clarified, eyes still fixed on the magazine. Some months ago you saved my life, he mocked her again. As a medical student, that was my duty. I would have done that for anyone dying in front of me. Now, if you'll excuse me, I am busy. Salah did not budge even though Timur tugged at his sleeve. He had some regard for Imama because of Wasim. Salah freed himself. I wanted to thank you for that night, although your treatment of me wasn't altogether professional, Salah said seriously, and Imama looked up at him. If you are referring to my slapping you, then it was unprofessional and I am sorry, although I'm sure you deserved more, she said, swallowing the half-unsaid words. I didn't mind that. I meant something else, he replied nonchalantly. You bandaged my wrist very sloppily, and you weren't even able to check my blood. Pressure properly, he said, popping a stick of chewing gum into his mouth. Imama felt her earlobes turning red. She stared at him without blinking. He continued to mock her. What a shame that you could not even do what any untrained person can be expected to do. I am not a doctor, I'm just a medical student. And as for being unprofessional, there'll always be a next time since you are in the habit of making such attempts. I can keep practicing on you to make myself perfect, but Salah was unfazed. He smiled at her saying, if you are trying to embarrass me, I will fail as you are not embarrassed, she completed his statement. I know that because embarrassment is a trait found in humans. And what am I in your opinion? Salah asked in the same tone. A vet may be better able to answer that question, she retorted. Salah burst out laughing. Every dictionary defines a biped animal as a human being. I walk on 2 feet. From a bear to a dog, animals can walk on 2 feet if required to or if they desire to. But I have only 2 feet and I use them all the time. Well, you're lucky not to be four-legged, that's why you should go to a vet, he'd be able to explain better, and Mama's tone was cold. She was disgusted, but Sala was not to be put down. You know so much about animals that you'd have made a great vet. I'm very impressed by your knowledge, and Mama's face turned a deeper crimson. If you become my vet, I'll come to you for treatment, and perhaps you could even do research on me. What fee will you charge? He talked in a serious tone, and Mama was at a loss. Getting into a conversation with him was inviting trouble. Wasim will inform you, she said, trying to ward him off. Sala joked about that suggestion, despite understanding the threat in her voice. Timur tugged at him again. Come on, Sala. I have work to do. Okay, Yar, don't pull at me, he then turned to Mama. I was just joking, I really wanted to thank you. You and Wasim were a great help. Bye. And Mama breathed a sigh of relief seeing them go away. This fellow was truly crazy, she was surprised that a person like Wasim could be friends with him. Did Sala come to see you? It was Wasim. He had seen Timur and Sala from a distance. What did he have to say? Wasim was curious. I'm surprised how you can have such friends, I have yet to meet someone as rude and obnoxious as him, and Mama was very annoyed. He had come to thank me, and at the same time to tell me that I could neither bandage properly nor check blood pressure. Forget it, Wasim smiled. He's crackers. I felt like landing a few more slaps on his face, just turning up with his friend who's no better. By the way, he said he was your friend too, she remembered. Not exactly, just an acquaintance. How can you keep company with such boys? Look at the way they dress, their appearance, the way they talk. You should have nothing to do with them. And Mama began to walk out and Wasim followed her. I'm amazed though how he could have noted that the bandage was not applied correctly or that I had a problem checking his blood pressure. He was flailing about so much, how could he have observed what was going on, and Mama was compelled to think. He was right, Wasim noted with a smile. You did have a problem. I know, I was very nervous, she conceded. I'd never seen such a case before, and all that gushing blood really scared me. And his attitude, to top it all, I've not seen a suicide case behave this way. And you aspire to be a doctor, a competent and renowned one, it's unbelievable, he said. I didn't tell you all this for you to make fun of me, she protested as they walked to the parking lot. And Mama noticed a change in Zainab and Jalal over the last few days, it was in their attitude. They seemed abrupt, there was a tension between them and her. She tried calling Jalal a couple of times at the hospital, but the answer was always the same, he was busy. When he came to pick up Zainab from the college, he did not stop to meet her as before. And even if he came across a Mama, it was a perfunctory greeting. She thought first that it was just her suspicion, but when this attitude became more pronounced, she decided to confront him and turned up at the hospital. Jalal's reaction was cold and indifferent, not even a smile crossed his face when he met her. It's been a while since we met, so I thought I'd come over, she said, trying to shake off her fears. I've got to go, my shift is about to begin. And Mama was shocked. Zainab told me your shift ends at this time, which is why I came now. Jalal was quiet for a few moments, then he replied. Yes, that's right, but I have some other work today. And Mama tried to understand what he was thinking. Jalal, are you upset with me about something? No. I'm not upset with anyone, he replied curtly. Can you come out for 10 minutes and hear me out? Jalal looked at her and, with his coat on his arm, came out without a word. He glanced at his watch as if to give her a cue. Why are you misbehaving with me this way? She asked point blank. Am I misbehaving with you? He countered. You've been ignoring me for the past few days. Yes, I have, and Mama was taken aback by his blunt admission, it was unexpected. Because I do not want to meet you, he completed his statement. Why? She was stunned. There must be some reason why your attitude has changed so suddenly. Yes, there is, he said abruptly, But it's not necessary to tell you, just as it was not necessary for you to tell me certain things. What have I kept from you? That you are not a Muslim, he said bitterly. And Mama's breath choked. Did you not hide this from me? Jalal, I wanted to tell you, her voice betrayed her defeat. Wanted to, but you didn't. You tried to deceive me. I did not try to deceive you. Why would I do that? She protested. But you did, he shook his head in disgust. You deliberately trapped me, and Mama's eyes welled up. Trapped you? She murmured, looking at him in utter defeat. You knew of my love for the Prophet, boo. Now that I've come to know about you, let alone marriage, I don't want to have anything to do with you. Don't ever try to meet me again. Jalal's tone was bitter and curt. Jalal, I have converted to Islam, she whispered. Oh, come on. Standing here you've just converted for my sake, he mocked her, with a dismissing gesture. I've not done this for you, although you have been a path to it. This happened many months ago, and if you don't believe me, then come along, I'll show you proof. Jalal was perplexed. I accept I made the first move towards you, and Mama continued, trapped you, as you say. But I was helpless as far as you were concerned, it was beyond my control, it was your voice. I told you what I felt when I first heard you recite. Would you have behaved the same way if you'd already known about me? This is what I feared and why it took me so long to tell you. There are some things in life beyond our control. For me, it was you. Does your family know about this? No. I can't tell them. I am already engaged. I didn't tell you about this either. She paused. I don't want to be married into that family. I want to marry you. I'm just waiting to complete my education so that I am on my own feet, and then I'll marry you. For years down the road, when I have qualified as a doctor, perhaps my parents will not object to my choice. If I tell them now about my acceptance of Islam, they'll pull me out of college and marry me off to a shad. She expressed her fears. I am still dependent on them, my hands are tied. You were my only hope for a way out, and I truly love you, Jalal, or else I would not have proposed marriage. You have no idea of my circumstances, my problems. If you were in my place, you'd realize that I had no choice but to cover up. Jalal sat down on the wooden bench nearby. He was distinctly disturbed. And Mama wiped away her tears. Do you feel nothing for me? Are you involved with me just because I love you? Sit down, Imama, he replied. The whole Pandora's box now lies open before me. If I cannot estimate your circumstances, neither can you understand my situation. There's no way my parents will agree to me marrying a non-Muslim, regardless of my feelings for her. Jalal, I am not a non-Muslim, she reiterated. You are not one now, but you were before, and then your family. Those are things I can do nothing about, she replied weakly. They just sat in silence. Then she turned to Jalal. Can't you marry me without your parents' consent? That would be a very major step, he said, shaking his head despondently. And suppose I decide to, I cannot do it. Like you, I am also dependent on my parents. But you're doing a house job and will be established in a few years. I want to specialize after the house job, and I can't do that without financial backing from my parents. It'll take me 3 to 4 years to establish my practice after specialization. Then, Imama's tone was steeped in despair. Then give me time to think, to find a way out. I don't want to lose you, and I don't want to lose my career, either. My problem is that I have nothing of my own. Whatever I have is my parents', and they are spending all their savings on me in the hope that I'll do something for them in the future. He stopped and then said, Is it not possible that your parents should agree to marry you to me? In that case, at least my parents will be satisfied that you didn't marry me secretly against your parents' wishes. Imama looked at him, hopeless. I don't know, I can't say whether this is possible or not, she spoke slowly. Not a single girl of my family has married outside of her own free will for me to say what followed. But I do know that the reaction to such an action would be very severe. My parents love me very much, but they'll never allow me to take this step. You have no idea of the humiliation and loss of face it means for my father. They'll not change their ways because of me. If I had any hope of support from my family, I would not have searched for help outside, nor from you. And Mama was speaking softly, trying to control her voice from breaking down. And Mama, I will help you. My parents will not reject me, though it will take time to convince them. I will help you. You're right, I should help you. Jalal was thoughtful, but disturbed. And Mama felt a slight sense of relief. Jalal had not let her down. I made the right choice, she thought to herself. Equals 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 equals. This is the end of chapter 2. What happens next? Wait for the chapter 3. Thank you.